The envelope was the kind of white that screams trouble, thin, official, and smug. It waited on my porch rail like a vulture that had learned to read. Community Utilities Statement. It said, because the HOA can't just say bill like normal people. I tore it open with the calm of a man defusing a bomb and found a number so radioactive it practically hummed. $3,287.14. For electricity. For 1 month. In spring. When my air conditioner was still busy losing an argument with pollen. I read it 3 times. I even tried reading it upside down in the faint hope it would turn into $12.78 and an apology cookie. But no, it was $3,000 and change, plus a cheerful note, adjusted per HOA energy alignment. Because apparently electrons have chakras now, and Marcy's clipboard is their spiritual guide. Marcy, our HOA president, moves around the neighborhood like a parade marshal for bad decisions. Same haircut as a Lego figurine, step count powered exclusively by indignation, and a smile that says, I practice saying per my email in the mirror. She once found a guy for an aggressive bird bath. The bird bath was round. The birds were fine, but it had masculine angles, according to her. I didn't know geometry had a gender until Marcy invented one. I stood on my porch barefoot, toes on the cold concrete, and stared across the cul-de-sac at the HOA office. Really just a refurbished model home with a sign. And imagine the fluorescent lights inside buzzing, sucking up community electricity while I apparently funded the sun. Somewhere, a weed whacker droned like it had a court-appointed therapist. My neighbor Pete waved from his driveway with the floppy arm of a man who's given up challenging the absurd. You get the letter? He called. I got a ransom note, I said. He nodded the slow nod of shared trauma. Marcy's been on a tear since the board approved the alignment. The alignment. Yeah, Pete said. They rebalanced the grid fees to reflect usage realities. I'm pretty sure my usage reality is not running a Bitcoin mine from my pantry. He shrugged. Tell that to their spreadsheet. Inside, my apartment hummed with the ordinary. Refrigerator, router, the smug LED clock that thinks it's important. Nothing was different except my pulse. I opened my laptop, pulled up last month's bill, $112.54, and paced out the difference like a heist planner who'd lost the blueprint. Then I did what any responsible adult does in a crisis. I made coffee strong enough to license a motorcycle and read the HOA bylaws. If you've never read HOA bylaws, imagine a choose-your-own-adventure book where every ending is a fine. Section 9.4.2 introduced energy alignment, which sounded like yoga for meters. Section 9.4.3 said the board could adjust communal costs as deemed necessary. Section 9.4.4 was just a smudge, probably from Marcy's highlighter leaking dreams. None of it contained math. Just vibes and the power of an unelected committee meeting at 7:03 p.m. on a Tuesday. So I went to the source. The HOA office smelled like printer toner and lemon wipes, a church for petty cleanliness. Marcy sat behind a glass partition labeled Resident Relations, which is adorable if you enjoy irony. Her clipboard rested on the counter, thick with forms that looked like they fined you for thinking about non-compliant light bulbs. Hi, I said, putting the bill down like a dead fish. Small question about this number that could pay for a used sedan. She adjusted her glasses with the precision of a surgeon who hates you. Name and lot number? I gave them. She typed like her keyboard owed her money. Oh, yes. You were flagged in the alignment cycle, she said, bright as a smoke alarm. Your property share increased due to variance. Variance? I asked. Of what? Usage, she said. The communities. I'm the community now? She laughed. A tidy, joyless chirp. We all are. The board approved it last month. Many residents saw adjustments. I looked at the bill again. This is not an adjustment. This is a personality change. She slid a printout through the slot, a spreadsheet where columns marched in gray little armies. My address, a line of digits, then a multiplier that might have been invented during a seance. As you see, she said, tapping a cell like it had misbehaved. There was a disproportionate draw in your sector last quarter, so your pro rata share. Hold on, I said. I don't share a meter with anyone. She smiled like she'd been waiting to say this all day. It's communal distribution. We manage the feed to reduce waste. Reduce waste by charging me triple? By aligning incentives, she corrected. When alignment is high, behavior improves. It took everything I had not to respond with the behavior improvement of flipping her desk. Instead, I asked for documentation, original meters, last quarter's reads, the board vote minutes, the contract with the utility. She blinked. People don't usually want receipts. They just want to be told they're special and fined for it. We'll email you, she said. Processing can take up to 15 business days. Great, I said. I'll just pay rent and moral victories until then. Marcy smile did that thing again, tight, sugarless. There's a late fee if not paid in 10. On the way out, I passed a bulletin board covered in HOA notices like refrigerator poetry for tyrants. NO unapproved seasonal flags. Shrub heights are a privilege. Report suspicious holiday lights. Someone had tacked up a flyer for a community energy awareness barbecue. Bring your own guilt. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the money. Okay, because of the money, but also because the hum of the neighborhood felt louder, like every transformer was clearing its throat. I walked the block barefoot, the midnight air heavy and wet. The HOA office was dark, except for a soft glow from the back, the server closet where they keep their little digital kingdom. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the light slip under the door, a quiet heartbeat in a paper body. I'm not the kind of person who starts fights. I'm the kind who finishes spreadsheets. My day job is creative problem solving, design systems, workflow puzzles, the art of finding paths no one else sees. I build things that seem inevitable once they exist. And when someone tries to charge me $3,000 for the privilege of being gaslit by a committee, my brain doesn't ask, can I beat them? It asks, what are the rules of the maze? By morning, I had a list, meters I'd photograph, neighbors I'd talk to, a records request for the utility, a friendly call to a lawyer I once helped move a couch. I printed forms and labeled folders like I was hosting a tiny, angry science fair. I also bought donuts, because people tell you the truth when they're chewing. By lunchtime, I had stories. Pete's bill had jumped by $600. Mrs. Alvarez, who spends summers with her sister and barely runs a fan, was hit with $900 and a note about seasonal realignment. A young couple at the end of the lane, the ones with the ceramic frog army on their porch, got dinged for variance cushion. No one had asked for documentation. No one had seen the vote. Everyone had just sighed and paid, the way you pay when the institution sounds confident and you're tired. I was tired too, just not in the way Marcy counted on. That evening, I walked past the HOA office again. The server light pulsed. The building buzzed. I stood very still and listened to the sound of a machine that believed it would always hum. And I smiled, just a little. Not because I had a plan. Plans are for people who need step-by-step guides. I had something better, a map of their assumptions. And those, I've learned, are the easiest wires to cut. By dawn, I'd turned my dining table into a war room. Maps of the subdivision, printouts of bills, photos of every meter panel I could locate, each shot labeled like a nature documentary. Meter A in native habitat, east wall, ants present. I pinned red string between addresses until my apartment looked like a detective show sponsored by Staples. The first win came at 9:12 a.m., when the utilities customer service line transferred me to a field tech named Evan, who sounded like a man who'd seen too many melted fuses and not enough sunlight. I told him I was trying to understand energy alignment, the way one might ask a librarian about dragons. He snorted, which felt promising. Alignment, he said. That your HOA's word. We have meters and rates. We don't do horoscopes. Could someone, I asked, be reselling power? Like taking a master feed and dividing it? Not legally, he said, and then paused the way people do when they find the last Dorito in the bag. Unless there's submetering with disclosure. You'd have paperwork, individual meters, separate accounts. If you don't, that's spicy. Spicy how? Fines, lawsuits, audits with men who don't smile. We set a time. Evan agreed to swing by on lunch if I happened to be standing near the HOA office with a coffee that accidentally had his name on it. I am nothing if not supportive of hydration. Before that, reconnaissance. Pete and I did the morning circuit with a tape measure and the confidence of men who have no actual authority. We peered at meter banks where gray boxes lined up like obedient pigeons. Most townhomes had individual meters, numbered and sealed. But the HOA office, the model home turned throne room, had something else, a stout metal cabinet labeled main feed with 2 fat conduits diving underground. The cabinet's padlock was big enough to require a backstory. Feels communal, Pete muttered. Feels hungry, I said. Mrs. Alvarez shuffled out in slippers and handed me a Ziploc of tamales for energy, which I accepted as legally binding motivation. The Frog Army couple, Jess and Marco, brought a stack of their bills, each stamped with new HOA line items that sounded like mood disorders. Variance cushion, seasonal buffer, transformer fatigue. Marco, who works nights, kept blinking at the sun like it had personally wronged him. Our usage went down, Jess said. The bill went up. Unless our ceiling fan is an extortionist, none of this makes sense. At 12:04 p.m., Evan rolled up in a utility van that had seen things. He wore reflective stripes and the expression of a man who could fix your life with a crescent wrench. I handed him coffee like I was bribing a dragon with cattle. He did a slow lap around the office, inspected the cabinet, and hummed. Okay, he said, popping the panel on the side of the building. Inside, a modest meter labeled community services with a serial number, spinning like a hamster that drank espresso. That's your HOA's meter, he said. Covers their building, lights, maybe irrigation, gate if you've got one. We've got a gate, I said. It mostly serves to trap delivery drivers in a philosophical loop. Evan pointed at the conduits. But those, he said, feed a distribution panel. See the stub-ups? There's a load going somewhere that isn't labeled here. Could be common area lighting. Could be the pool heaters if you've got a pool. We don't have a pool, Pete said. We have a puddle that dreams of being a pool. Evan scribbled the meter numbers. We can't open that main cabinet. That's your property. But if they're blending community loads and then realigning them onto residents without proper submetering, that's the kind of fun our compliance folks enjoy. He gave me a card. File a complaint. And take pictures of everything. The more boring the better. Boring I can do. Next stop, records. I drafted a letter to the HOA requesting board minutes, the vote authorizing alignment, the contract with the utility, all invoices for community power, and any submetering disclosures. I knew they'd stall. People who break rules are strangely punctual about deadlines when they benefit them, but paper trails are gravity. They pull. At 6:55 p.m., I went to the board meeting. The conference room smelled like dry erase markers and triumph. Residents sat in folding chairs, the breathable kind that rattle with your dignity. Marcy presided at the front, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd been chosen for their ability to nod in unison. Her clipboard glowed with stickers. Compliance is kindness and aligned today in a font that threatened me. First, she chirped, kudos on the energy awareness barbecue. We saved 3.2 kilowatts last weekend by choosing room temperature buns. Polite laughter, the sound of people who know when to humor royalty. During open comment, I stood up, held my bill like a flag of surrender, and smiled with all my teeth. Hi. Quick set of questions, I said. 1. Please provide the board minutes authorizing the realignment. 2. Provide the contract with the utility and any approval for submetering or redistribution. 3. Confirm whether the HOA office and common area loads are being reallocated to private residents through alignment multipliers. 4. When can we all expect refunds? The room did that thing where oxygen becomes a rumor. Marcy's smile cracked half a molecule. We appreciate your engagement, she said. However, as outlined in Section 9.4.3, the board may adjust communal costs to ensure fairness. Adjusting, I said, is not inventing billing structures out of positive thinking. Are there submeters? Are you reselling power without disclosure? Her pen clicked like a metronome for bad decisions. Sir, we will not be bullied. Fantastic, I said. I prefer subpoenas. A murmur moved through the chairs. Mrs. Alvarez, sweet destroyer of worlds, lifted her hand. Why my bill so big when I'm not home? She asked. Is my apartment hosting parties without me? We're aligning incentives, Marcy said, and for the first time she sounded tired. Whose incentives? Jess asked. Because my incentive is to not fund your fluorescent hobby. Marcy rapped the table. If you object, you may file a grievance. I did, I said, holding up the stamped copy of my records request. And I filed with the Utilities Compliance Department. And, minor detail, I looped in a lawyer. That got their attention. The nodders stopped nodding. Marcy's nostrils flared like a horse that finds out the race is uphill. She recovered with a smile that could slice bread. Until the grievance is resolved, late fees apply. Lovely, I said. I'll pay when the lights of this office stop living rent-free on my tab. I left to the soundtrack of impatient whispers and chair legs on tile. On my door when I got home, a bright orange violation notice for unauthorized solicitation, donuts. I laughed so hard I scared a squirrel. They'd declared war on pastries. Good. Petty enemies make sloppy mistakes. Just after midnight, I took another walk. The air was still. The office window glowed. Somewhere down the block a transformer thunked, the sleepy heartbeat of a neighborhood that assumed morning would arrive as scheduled. I stood under the eave, counted the seconds between the hums, and marked them in my notebook. It wasn't a plan. Not yet. It was a rhythm. And once you know the beat of a machine, you know exactly when to cut the music. By the next morning, I had two things: confirmation from the utility that a compliance investigator had been assigned, and the sort of focus that makes small animals leave the yard voluntarily. Evan texted me first. Got the consumption logs. Office meter spiked every night from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Doesn't match typical usage. We'll explain later. What, exactly, was the HOA doing in the middle of the night? Charging the moon rent? Feeding a secret sauna cult? My brain served up scenarios ranging from illegal grow operation to Marcy's industrial-grade hairdryer. Either way, I had leverage. I also had allies. Pete was in full neighbor watchdog mode. Jess had dug up HOA newsletters going back 5 years. Turns out alignment was a word they'd tried and failed to introduce in 2019 before residents laughed it out of the room, and Mrs. Alvarez offered to accidentally drop by the office with her phone camera rolling. Even Marco, the night shift frog wrangler, started keeping a log of flickering lights and sudden brownouts. At noon, I got an email from the HOA. Your records request will be processed in the order received. Please allow up to 45 business days. 45 business days. They were playing the long game, hoping I'd tire out. Cute. So I went short game. That evening, under the forgiving cover of walking my dog, Pete's golden retriever, borrowed for plausible deniability, I strolled past the HOA office. Through the blinds, I spotted the main breaker panel in the hallway. I'd seen enough infrastructure rooms to know they had no security beyond a simple lock and an HOA faith that no one would dare. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a message from Evan. Investigators visiting Monday. Off the record, you didn't hear that. That gave me a deadline. And when you give me a deadline, I give you results. The prep was simple. Step 1. Confirm every resident affected. Check. Step 2. Document irregularities. Check. Step 3. Create an alignment of my own. My version of alignment didn't involve spreadsheets. It involved a portable breaker lockout kit, a borrowed thermal imaging camera, and the part of my brain that once rewired a lighting system during a concert without stopping the show. The lockout kit was just to make the point. I wasn't going to break anything. I was going to make sure everyone felt the same sudden darkness they'd been slowly billing into my wallet. Friday night, 2:14 a.m. The street was silent, the way only suburbs get silent, like they're pretending crime doesn't exist. I approached the office from the side alley, thermal camera slung around my neck. The image glowed bright where the feed lines ran. Warm cables, active transformers, that main breaker panel like a small sun in the night. The lock took less persuasion than I expected. Inside, the breakers were labeled with tape in Marcy's neat handwriting. office lights, irrigation, sign light, and 3-symbol question mark. The symbol's question mark breaker was warmest of all. Midnight energy hog, mystery solved. I flipped the main to OFF. The sound wasn't silence, it was negative sound. Fans stopped. Compressors clicked down. That soft electric hum that's always there just vanished. Street lamps died. The HOA's glowing sign went black. Even the little server closet light I'd been watching for days winked out like it was ashamed. 2 minutes later, the first window opened. A voice, "What the hell?" Then another, and another. Somewhere, a car alarm hiccuped awake. By 2:20 a.m., the HOA office door banged open. Marcy emerged in a bathrobe patterned with what I think were pineapples, though they might have been tiny warning triangles. She clutched a flashlight like she was about to interrogate the moon. "Someone call maintenance," she shouted. "This is sabotage." From across the street, Jess, innocently walking her dog, called back. "Oh no, Marcy. Maybe it's just variance." I nearly choked holding back laughter. For 15 delicious minutes, they scrambled. I stood far enough away to look like a curious bystander, noting every panicked phone call, every time they opened that breaker panel and stared at it like it was an ancient riddle. Then, as quietly as I'd killed the power, I flipped the main back on. The hum returned like nothing had happened, except now there were 30 confused residents asking loud questions. And every single one of them now had the same realization. Whatever alignment was, it depended on them never seeing what happened when the HOA's precious feed went dark. I walked home under the buzz of reawakened streetlights, thinking one thing. The real fun starts Monday. Monday arrived humid and smug, the kind of morning where even the clouds looked like they were gossiping. I'd barely finished my coffee when the first text from Pete came in. "Marcy's pacing the office like she's expecting a SWAT raid." He wasn't far off. By 9 a.m., a white SUV with the utilities logo rolled into the cul-de-sac, followed by a second vehicle. This one with compliance division stenciled on the side in letters that didn't need to be big to be terrifying. I watched from my porch as 2 inspectors got out. These were not clipboard hobbyists. These were the kind of people who own hard hats with their names printed on them. The taller one had a tool belt loaded like a medieval armory. The shorter one carried a tablet and the posture of someone who enjoys telling people, "This is a recorded statement." They walked into the office. 10 minutes later, the first resident, Jess, wandered over to my porch like a reporter hot off the press. "They're asking about submetering," she said, eyes wide. "And the mystery breaker. The one labeled 3 symbols." I asked, sipping. "Yeah." Marcy tried to say it was for a decorative water feature. The guy asked to see it. She said it was in storage. "Oh, Marcy." By 10:15, word had spread. Mrs. Alvarez, Pete, the Frog Army couple, and half a dozen other residents were gathered outside the office under the guise of just enjoying the weather. Every time the inspectors came out to look at a meter bank, we closed in like polite vultures. The taller inspector traced the main feed from the HOA's meter cabinet toward the residential lines, nodding as he went. "That's a redistribution loop," he said loudly enough for us to hear. "Can't be charging individual units without disclosure and dedicated meters. State law's clear on that." Pete coughed into his fist. Alignment. At 11 o'clock, they called a closed-door meeting with the board. I knew better than to barge in. Instead, I leaned against a tree and waited. 35 minutes later, the inspectors walked out. One of them was smiling, the kind of smile that's earned. The other handed Marcy a stack of forms so thick I could see the staples from 50 feet away. Marcy looked deflated, still upright, but her eyes had that glassy sheen of a person whose day had been entirely rewritten by reality. The inspectors stopped to talk to us. "If you've been billed for alignment charges," the shorter one said, "document everything and submit claims. The HOA is under investigation for improper utility reselling. Any affected residents will be contacted." "Contacted with checks?" Mrs. Alvarez asked sweetly. "That's the idea," the inspector said. The board tried to salvage control with a hastily emailed clarification that afternoon. The Energy Alignment Program was designed to promote communal responsibility. Due to a misunderstanding with the utility provider, Adjustments may be necessary. Please bear with us during this process. Translation: we got caught. Please don't form an angry mob. Of course, we were already forming one. Just the well-documented, legally airtight kind. I uploaded scans of my bills, the photos of meters, my records request, and even a few shots from Friday night's blackout stroll to a shared folder for the neighborhood. Jess added a spreadsheet of every resident's bill changes over the past 6 months. Marco included timestamps of every unexplained power surge. It was like building a scrapbook, but instead of happy memories, it was full of receipts that could sink an HOA. By Tuesday morning, the cracks widened. Pete texted, "Marcy called an emergency board meeting. Someone from the state AG's office is coming." I decided to drop by, not to storm in, but to linger just outside the door, sipping coffee so slowly it was almost art. Inside, voices rose and fell. At one point, Marcy said, "This is harassment," and someone replied, "This is evidence." The meeting broke up with board members leaving in different directions, not even making eye contact with each other. That's when I knew the collapse had begun. But collapse wasn't enough. Not yet. I wanted them to feel it, like we'd been feeling every time the bills arrived. So I planned one more demonstration. Not sabotage this time, just a selective reminder. Something they couldn't ignore. And for that, I need a little help from my new friends at the utility. Wednesday night, the utility crew rolled in quietly, like they were here to rob the place. Except their robbery target was illegal power redistribution. Evan was among them, grinning like a kid about to light a firecracker. "Got the green light from compliance," he said. "We're installing temp meters on every building to log actual draw. And we're cutting the HOA office's mystery feed for safety testing. Totally above board." I could have hugged him. By 8:30 p.m., 3 utility trucks were parked along the curb. Residents emerged in slippers, holding mugs, whispering like it was the world's most polite block party. The frogs from Jess and Marco's porch looked downright celebratory in the streetlight glow. At 9:02, Evan opened the main cabinet on the HOA office. A few turns of a wrench, a pull of a lever, click, and the mystery breaker went dead. And just like that, the lights in the HOA office snapped off. The illuminated "Welcome to Cedar Grove" sign went black. The landscaping uplights died, plunging the manicured hedges into the same darkness as the rest of us peasants. Inside, I caught a glimpse of Marcy at her desk as her computer monitor blinked out. It took maybe 5 seconds for the yelling to start. The office door flew open. Marcy stormed out, phone to her ear, shrieking at some unlucky soul about critical systems and emergency authority. The only emergency was her ego going cold turkey from free electricity. Behind her, another board member stumbled out holding a flashlight that was clearly low on batteries. He aimed it at the dead sign like shining it would bring it back to life. Jess called over from the sidewalk, voice dripping sugar. "What's the matter?" "Transformer fatigue." Pete added, "Don't worry, the variance will improve in the morning." The crowd chuckled, soft at first, then louder as more residents joined in. Marcy's face was pure storm cloud. For the next 40 minutes, they scrambled, dragging out extension cords, trying to plug into outlets in the parking lot, calling the utility only to be told, "We're aware of the outage and it's being addressed." Which, technically, was true. It was just being addressed by me watching with a cup of tea. Every attempt failed. The breaker stayed off. The server closet stayed dark. The only lights in the building came from the occasional phone flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. And that's when it hit me. This was the first time in years the HOA had been literally powerless. At 9:48, Evan gave me the signal. He flipped the breaker back on. The hum returned, lights flickered back to life, and Marcy vanished inside without another word. The next morning, every resident received an email from the HOA. Effective immediately, the Energy Alignment Program is suspended pending review. All charges for alignment will be refunded in full within 30 days. Attached was a spreadsheet with the refund amounts. Mine was $3,287.14. Mrs. Alvarez got $912. Pete, $604. Jess and Marco, $1,076. The neighborhood group chat lit up like a fireworks finale. When I walked past the office that afternoon, Marcy was inside, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No clipboard, no smile, no pineapple bathrobe, just paperwork and a desk lamp. She glanced up, met my eyes for a fraction of a second, then looked back down. She didn't wave. I didn't either. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the streetlights hum. Not a single one buzzed louder than it should. And in the dark corner of the HOA parking lot, the Welcome to Cedar Grove sign flickered, sputtered, and went out again. Could have been the bulb. Could have been something else. Either way, I let it stay dark. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.